this is a silly thing, or couldn't be applied. So, but also we have to be sure that we need this law to fight terrorism, to fight demonstrations, the weapon demonstrations, and the demonstrations that cut the roads and make instability in the state. So this is what is the position of my party and my opinion regarding to this law.
Another issue, which is November the 14th, the emergency law, or the emergency period, so to speak, ends. And with that, the role of the army in standing in the street to control things, or to make sure that things do not get out of hand, will be over. Do you think we need an extension, or do we need the presence, the military presence in the street?
Yeah. Now, during our roadmap, we are in a cross now. We have to decide. Shall we go into a referendum while we have emergency situation, or emergency law is applied? I think this will make a question mark about the validity or the credibility of such referendum. So it's important to get out of this case and try to apply the normal law. And we have to have a law, give a permission to the security to be in the street, and they should have the rights to do their job, to protect such process. To make a new constitution, it's the dream of most of the Egyptians who participated in 30th June revolution. So we have to be careful, and we have to also to understand that we cannot do such referendum or make the new constitution while we have an emergency law to protect the credibility internally and also the external and international opinion. And we shouldn't give such excuse to the terrorism of Muslim Brothers that we had constitution while we have an emergency situation.
But can we afford that the military leaves the street?
I don't think they have to leave the street completely, but of course we will not have a curfew, but they can be there to do their job without special law, without special emergency case. The army in the street, not because we have emergency law or emergency case. They are there because there is a call for people to protect, to ask them to join and to participate, protecting the security. So this is another issue not related to the law or the emergency situation.
Okay, Engineer Hussein Ali, thank you very much for joining us. Mr. Said, I asked you prior to the phone call if we just take a step back with regards to the demonstrations, and I asked you a question. You remember the question?
Yes. Violence in all forms is forbidden by law. And the current crackdown on the violent extremist terrorist organizations operating within the country should continue. But using a mandate by banning all protests, I don't see how that fits with actually cracking down on the Muslim Brotherhood as a whole. Because the Muslim Brotherhood are classified as a terrorist organization, and by law we should fight them, because we do not want terrorists in our country. But banning all forms of protests is a totally different case, because this takes us out of the league of the Muslim Brotherhood, because they're already classified as a terrorist organization, and puts us in a totally different game with everyone else. Disgruntled factory workers, people who do not have the rights, the disabled, they do have protests. And given the current form of that law, I don't see any protest that can actually happen feasibly in any of the Egyptian cities. So either the whole form of the law, the whole paraphrasing of the law should change, or they should wait until an elected parliament passes this law. And it should be in the form of an amendment to the previous law, the protest law that we already do have. So I'm not against regulating protests. But what I am against is that a government that came to power through a massive waves of protests against a fascist dictator, to actually ban all forms of protest by putting all sorts of red tape in front of them. They either minimize the red tape or not issue it. And I don't see a confliction with the emergency law and the army being on the street. The army does have a mandate from the people to fight terrorism,
yes,
and it should continue to do so. It isn't its sworn duty to fight for this country. And emergency law or not. And when the emergency law ends, I think it is a cause to celebrate that we are starting a new period with freedom of speech, without fascist rule in this country. And we shouldn't take that step back into with the risk of falling into the same vicious cycle again.
Okay. Going back to the emergency law, Engineer Hussein Ali was against an extension of the emergency law or putting something to that effect, saying that this would lessen the credibility.
I totally agree. I totally agree. The referendum should not happen in the emergency law. When the security situation actually improves, and it is actually improving by the day. Of course, we do have.
Of course, you know, for anybody hearing us now after the tragic incident that took place a couple of days ago, it's very difficult to convince anyone.
Of course, but you have to understand that these incidents did happen and will continue to happen, and the army should fight this because this is, as I said, a terrorist organization. But as a whole, it is not happening en masse as it was happening before. It was not happening on a large scale like it was happening before with Rabaa Square and Nahda Square with torture chambers in there. Regular torture chambers where people were taken prisoners inside and murdered. But now it is, you should look on the bright side of things, that things are improving. And they should continue to do so. So when emergency law ends, it's a cause for celebration that we are starting a new chapter in our lives. And by then, I do hope that the army actually succeeds in breaking down the whole organization of the Muslim Brotherhood, which I think is not such a hard task for the Egyptian army.
When you say that the army should be cracking down because this is a terrorist organization, we're talking about, who are you referring to when you say it's a terrorist organization?
I'm referring to the Muslim Brotherhood as an organization and its splinter groups that formed in the early 90s, with whether they are Jama'ah Islamiyya or the jihadists.
Very good. Some, especially in the West, are asking us to find the formula to, I don't want to use the word coexist, but that...
Actually, that was the word used in yesterday's meeting with
this reminds me of a completely different thing. Here we're talking about the Palestinian-Israeli question when we say coexistence, but that's why I don't like to use that word. But the fact that you're asked to accept Muslim Brotherhood as part and parcel of the fabric of the society. And indeed, they are a part and parcel of the fabric of the society, but how can people accept them? I mean, how can you tell people to accept them after this incident that took place a couple of days ago where a wedding is turned into a funeral?
Of course.
An 8-year-old is shot dead. I mean, it's absolutely unacceptable or illogical for someone to ask you to, you have to be tolerant and you have to be inclusive.
There will not.
Can this happen?
No, I don't see it happening. It's getting harder by the day. With the Muslim Brotherhood actually taking the violent path day over day, and I think we have passed this marginal point or a long time ago. I mean, the point of no return for them was Rabaa Square when they were asked to disperse peacefully, and they did not. This is when they took that step onto that road, and they cannot actually turn around again. We will not accept fascists in our system ever again. And I think the Egyptian people, even if they are included in the political process, I don't think the Egyptian people will take it lightly. Because the Egyptian people have been stung with religious fascism, and they will not accept it anymore. And I do not see any way or form that the Muslim Brotherhood as an organization or any of its splinter groups should or will take part in the political process again. But then again, you do have, as a Muslim, because this as an organization...
You have parliamentary elections and they can run under different...
Exactly, and the Muslim Brotherhood as an organization does not exist anymore. So, but you have different levels of individuals. People who are in the leadership, who are actually convicted and do have charges pressed against them, whether it's inciting murder, inciting mass violence, destruction of public and private property. There's a whole different array of different crimes that were committed. But then you have the fourth and the fifth line, the youth that actually were just newly recruited into the Muslim Brotherhood, thinking that it was an actual religious club or a social organization. These youth were not exposed to the same violence, or were not exposed to the same fascist ideology throughout the years as the others have. So if they leave this organization, they do have the chance, because they are yet to be exposed to this and they are yet to take part in this violent actions. They do have the choice to leave this and rejoin with the Egyptian people as a whole.
Some have.
Of course they do.
Some have, and some have condemned how...
Exactly. So if they do, if these individuals do take this path, then I don't see why they cannot run for parliament or even run for presidency. But as an organization, I think it is impossible. And and I think I speak for many, and the majority of Egyptians, will not accept.
The organization is over, it's finished.
It's finished.
It's finished. This is not something that we
would even discuss.
Maybe the issue that raises itself, what will be the future of that organization internationally, and this is another issue. With us on the line is Dr. Ihab El Kharrat, former member of the Shura Council, and worth noting he is a member of the 50 member Constitutional Committee. Dr. Kharrat, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Well, as a matter of fact, I'm not a member of the 50 members Constitutional Committee. I was a member in the first committee. I resigned from it during the Brotherhood era.
Okay.
But welcome.
How do you feel about the progress? The progress of the committee, the current Constitutional Committee, is met with mixed feelings. Some think they're on the right track. Others think that the process is a bit too slow. There was expectancy that by now a draft will be out and people can actually start to read and make up their minds about this constitution.
Yes, I think that the committee has done a very good job up till now in terms of trying to express the different views of the Egyptian people, of different sectors of the Egyptian people, and these views were expressed a good intellectual and revolutionary political effort was put and was clear in terms of how to phrase these concerns, and sometimes views that are not really identical were reformulated in order to reach a consensus. So I think